So, welcome back to this week's episode, and I believe now we're on episode 7. So we're rattling on, and things are getting to that stage where you start to think, right, I need to get some of these kits across the line, and I keep starting them, I keep adding to them, but nothing seems to be getting finished just yet. But I'm sure we'll make some large leaps forward soon enough. So this is kicking off with what's on the bench. We've got the Eduard 132nd BF109E3, this is going to be, from the Condor Legion boxing, which was released this year. Now, so the hard bit is almost done, I guess. So we've got the cockpit in there, that's all been weathered up and done. I've got all the instrument panels done as well. We've got the main instrument panel be going on at a later date. I've also painted the ROM02 on the areas where the slats are going to go. That just gives some definition because this is going to be ROM63, and because the colours are so similar, I'm using the colours from the MRP range, and that means that the ROM02 here is a little bit darker than what I would expect, but at least it will give contrast to their 63, whereas if you use, I would usually use this colour here, which is Mr. Colour 60 for the ROM02, but this is actually identical. If you paint this over the MRP ROM63, there is no difference. So yeah, I need a little bit of contrast, so I've got to do something somewhere. This kit, I've built one in the past and converted it to a D. I've never actually built the kit itself straight into an E, which it's designed for, and I'm encountering quite a lot of problems with this kit for sure. It's showing its age. There's just so much flash on it all over the place, which was surprising, and also a few short shots. Small, but you know, there nonetheless. Not massive problems, but really, you know, I don't know what's happened. Maybe there's been a problem with the mould or something. There was quite a sizable gap here. Like I said last week, that I've been away for a week now, so just before I went I added sprue glue all over here just to fix the joins. I also put in where the joins are here, I've used plasticard to fill those gaps, and I'm going to cut that down now and then start sanding it back. I'll still have to fill on that's not going to be a perfect seam, but at least it will have done most of the gap filling. I've got the wheel wells in, and they're nice and tight and go in just there from the fixing points for the undercarriage. They slot in to these parts. That all went on okay. All in all, it's not too bad. There was a massive gap here for this drop-in bit that sorts out the air intake on the chin. So I was going to have a gap one way or the other. So because there's a lip here to take the front lip of this wing, I pushed the radiator back, which is not where it wanted to go. I had to clear out quite a lot between these two areas here to make it go back to where it needed to be. Now I've built the 1/48 kit and it works very well, but here it just didn't seem to fit. There was either going to be a couple mil gap at the front or at the back, so I chose it to get it at the back, get the wing all lined up and joined perfectly, and then I've just ploughed this area here with sprue glue. I'm going to need to sand that back and then fill it again, but I may top off with something like super glue because it seems I'm just getting it sinking away there now, so I might need to use a different filler just to finish off. But that'll all soon be sorted out and we'll get the seam lines done, and I think from then we've either got the easy bit or the hard bit next, where we put the cowling on. Now there are problems if you just do it straight out of the box as far as the instructions are concerned, but I've seen online there's quite a few builds that, as long as you take your time and test fit, you can actually build this up without any filler at all. So that's what I'll be trying to do. We've got a whole cowling piece to go on. We've actually got, there's a little peg that goes on here first for the propeller to go on because we're not using the engine. Then the whole cowling goes on. Then we've got the gun panel that goes on here, the cover, and then two side panels. So there's a lot of joins which all need to be pretty much seamless. You can get there if you take your time, so you'll see more of that in the actual video build when that comes together. But that shows you where we are there. It's looking alright, looking the part, and I'm glad I got to this stage before having a short break. So picking it up from here shouldn't be too much of a problem. We've also got the dreaded Boomerang. Now you will have probably seen, most of you now, the first part of this build that went up last Sunday. Hopefully I wasn't too harsh on it. It is a pretty tough kit, but it's not terrible. It certainly isn't unbuildable, but you've got to want to put the time and effort into the kit to get anywhere, I would think. Now again, I was quite happy to get all of this joined together. I really had to force some of this. I really had to get it clamped together, so it was a mixture of super glue to hold it and then the Tamiya extra thin to actually bind it together. And I just wanted to get the cockpit into the fuselage, the wing on, and everything sorted, and the engine on. Now, after getting back and looking over this, it does look like I've got this firewall here for the engine looks to be a little bit slanted, which has then made the engine, you can't actually see it when you look in there, but I tried to line it up here. I just can't see, something's just not right. I can't see what, but it doesn't look right in there. That's not straight, it's like slanted. So I think what I need to do is just run a bit of Tamiya extra thin in there again to soften that joint, and then with some tweezers just kind of move it, I think, then fix it with super glue, and then it's in the position, because really that should be dead straight across there, and it does seem to be sort of more like that as opposed to that, which obviously will throw it off here. I expect if I got a ruler out and measured it all, that this hub here is actually possibly like that instead of being like that. Whether or not that's a major issue, considering that all this is going to be covered up, I just don't like the fact that you can see it when you look through the undercarriage. So for that reason, I've also seen there's some joins here as well, so I applied some filler to them. I have no idea how I'm going to get in there and sand those, but I will come up with a way, probably with sandpaper and some tweezers like that. But yeah, it's really not that bad. The major gap was here, and I've rammed in some plasticard again, which is all sorted, so I'll cut that back again, sand back, and we'll see where we are. Around the front here, this massive join seems to be okay. So I'm going to clean all of that up first, then put these resin inserts in, then clean those up. Then we should be somewhere near it. We can then start concentrating on the tailplane and get all of that in. And it shouldn't be too much of a problem after that. There's hardly any bits left now. There's no sprues left. There's just a few bits in the box to get sorted. So I'll continue on with this, and we'll have another update video for you on Sunday. Might not be too long, probably only less than 10 minutes probably, but at least that will update you to where we are, and then we'll move on forward from there. So now we've got an inbox review that we'll have as part of this weekly update, and this is part of what I was mentioning before. This is another commission build that's come in, a little bit longer term on this, got a bit more time on this running up to Christmas, and it's only 1/72, so it's a little bit complex in places, so it's going to need the time, but it's not going to be too much of an issue to get it done by that period, so that's quite good. So I thought we'd have a look inside the box. The customer would like to have this version here, which is slightly more tricky because you've got these two and the box art, which has got a sort of spine coming off of the canopy, and then there was a conversion that was done to remove that spine, so it's not got this bit, as you can see, and then have a bubble canopy. So we'll be converting it to this one. I've got to be honest, I have absolutely no idea what this plane is, where it came from, what the reason was. I mean, I've looked it up a little bit, so I've got a bit of understanding before, but I had never heard of this, so when it turned up it was a little bit of a unusual request, but nevertheless looks like an interesting interesting kit to do. Very sort of Mustang looking, I think they were aiming towards when they got down here. So let's have a look in the box. So first off, instructions. It's typical RS models. This is a short run kit, one sprue basically with a few small parts. You've got injected moulded clear part for the normal version, and then a vac form bubble canopy and a resin insert for the spine. There's no etch set, so this is all moulded in. So as we get into the cockpit, you've got a chair with the control stick, rudder, sort of bar, I suppose, and the instrument panel. All of this is in plastic and it's moulded on. It is quite good. Colour call-outs are just in the name of the colours. So we've got light grey, for example. So once all of the cockpit tubs together, we get the fuselage halves together, and then this is when we get to pick what we're doing. So again, as with short run kits, it's noticeably vague on what you've got to do. It's basically, if you want to do that one, cut it off where this sort of dark area is and stick the resin bit in. There's no line on the inside of the fuselage, so we'll be looking at using the panel lines, and it does seem simple enough. I think you just run back from here to the tail, so it will pretty much be cutting this bit off here. Once that's done, I would imagine with that gap you join these two together and then try and get the resin insert to go in on top. That would be my way of thinking. It's probably how I approach it, but when I get nearer to it, we'll discuss what's been done. Again, I'll be filming this one much like the Boomerang, so in stages. Then exhausts go on, and air intake and a few other small parts go on to complete the fuselage section. Then the wings are on in a conventional manner, with one lower piece for the wing and then the top parts going on to build up the actual wing. We won't be doing that, we'll be continuing on down this route. So we do have a fully weaponized aircraft. Then finishing off with the undercarriage going on, setting up profile, strangely angled wheels there, so we need to take note of that, how they're going to go on, and then the rest of the parts coming together. And you will have seen there's not a lot as far as the aiming towards the version that we're doing, so I need to keep my eye on the ball when I get into this one. So as usual, everything's in one bag, so let's just get it all out. We've got a seat there that's come loose in the bag. So we've got a strip of decals there, which are quite nice. Swedish aircraft, obviously, it's showing that with the red and the white cross. They look printed very nicely, tight carrier film, blocks of carrier film around the numbers. But yeah, they don't look to be a problem at all. Actually quite good considering it's RS models. Then we've got the typical short run sprue, which is a little bit flashy, a little bit heavy, but details there, and we've got the kit. And again, looking at this being a Doflug 3802 or 3803, who on earth else is going to produce this if RS models don't? So you've got to give them credit from that point of view for sure. And in fact, as far as things go, this is actually very clean. There's not really much flash at all on this, just a few sort of mould lines which you're going to get. Everything looks pretty good actually. It's the fit that's going to be the main issue. We've obviously got large ejector pins in places that need to come out. That's typical for anything like this. You can't expect too much in that way. We've got actual wheel wells built into the detail, which is nice. That's already done. That saves the job. That's quite good actually. Then we've got the bit that concerns my build. So in this bag you've got 3 pieces. So you've got an injection moulded canopy, which is 1 piece there for the normal and prototype version, and I must admit you could easily cut that if you wanted to open that up. That wouldn't be a problem. Then we've got a block of resin, which is the spine, which all looks very good, and that's going to go along there. So what we're going to need to do is, I believe, probably take it out along this line here and then go up and over that part there to just join into the horizontal stabilizer here. I think that's what we're going to be doing, something more or less like that, to that level. But again, I'll look at I'm sure there's pictures of this one. I'll look it up before I actually give it a go. So yeah, that shouldn't be too bad. Like for like, more or less. And at least we've got a line there to follow. And as with anything like this, it's better to leave a bit and sand it down as opposed to take too much at the start. And then we've got quite a nice vac form canopy actually, which, oh, I near thought I had a terrible crack on it, but it's actually a piece that's come off the resin. Yeah, that's a nice canopy as far as vac form canopies go. Very solid, nice thick plastic. There's plenty to work with. Sometimes they can be a bit thin in the pool, and the plastic's not really thick enough, so that can be an issue. So there we go, another very interesting subject. You can't complain from that point of view with the channel. We certainly give you something different every week, and there you go. So there we are, something very different indeed. Like I said, no real time scale on this one, just going to run up to around Christmas, that's what I've said, to try and get it done before Christmas and get it off to the customer. So stay tuned for that one, and hopefully that will be of interest to you as it is to me. And now we're back in the repair workshop, so carrying on from last week, I think it's time to address the Stuka propeller. Now, I've been wondering about how to get this off, because I don't want to damage it, and really I'd like a clean cut down through the middle, but I don't think that's really feasible. So the only real thing I can think of is just to rock it back and forth and twist it off, which is going to break it. That's half the point. That's why we are where we are. Because I don't think it was, I left it so it would spin. In fact, I hope not. That would be a bit of a problem. In fact, what's going on here? Oh, there we go. Well, there you are. What's happened there? So that's good. Wasn't expecting that. It's actually pulled out the peg, which is solid. That's not what the moving was. So now we can have a look and see what the issue was. Right, so I think the issue is we haven't got a perfectly round hole. Nearly said a square hole, that would be a weird thing to say, but it's not, it doesn't seem like it's where it's meant to be. And also I believe this has actually snapped off from the engine. I'm pretty sure, because there's Trumpeter give you an engine inside here that you can never see, but I guess it's for, because of these scoops and hatches and all the rest of it, you're going to be able to see it, so I imagine it's something to do with that. I think the peg was sticking out of the engine, and that's loosened and sort of started snapping here, and then I've just finally ended it. So the good news there is, I think what we can do is actually drill through into there using that hole as a sort of guide, I guess, so that we're going in pretty square to where we need to be, and then drill into this peg here as well. Actually, probably even get rid of that and maybe come out with tubing. What have I got? The trouble now is I'm not going to have the right size tubing for that hole. I wasn't expecting there to be a hole there. That's the first thing. I think I only go up to 0.8. Yeah, I do. So how are we going to do this? My initial idea was to use 0.8 tubing, drill a hole and go all the way in there using the Albion alloys, metal tubing, quite far back like that. And then drill into this, I suppose, actually. Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. We could probably still do this, because I could drill into that peg there. And that should give me the guide, and then it can actually thread into it there, which should make it extremely solid, which is what I want. And actually having it removable is ideal. If I can have it so it goes on and stays on, then it can come off, because it doesn't quite fit in the box. I've always got the nose cone rubbing up against something, so that would be ideal. So we'll explore that. Now, using my trusty precision drills, I have gone up from, what have I done here, 5, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, and then finished off with 0.8 of a mil to take the 0.8 of a mil rod, and that now does slot in there with a bit of a push, which is what we want. It's a bit stiff. Now the thing then to check is that it's pretty sort of square to it, and it does seem to be. It was a little bit off, but I just kept going around with the 0.8 drill bit until it was where it needed to be. So that's your main issue, is getting it level, and that's as you sort of go in like that, and you can use the bar to check this, because it being quite long, it will over exaggerate just how off it is, but it looks pretty good, if you can see there. It's not really rocking back and forth. That's the weight of it bending, but as long as it will sit straight, the actual piece of plastic will guide it. This just needs to be square onto itself. So now we need to drill into there and keep that quite square to everything as well. I'm using the phrase square. I hope it's right, or you understand what I mean. I'm not certainly not an engineer, so not really sure what I'm doing, but just trying to describe it. So the reason for using small drill bits, there's sort of a couple reasons. The reason I do it is, first, I find it very difficult to get the hole in the right place. So if you use a smaller drill bit, you can see how far off you are, and then sort of fix it with the next size drill up, if that makes sense. You can sort of lean it one way or another. This is proving quite difficult actually to get this in here, especially on camera. The reason for using these precision drills as well is they're so sharp when it comes to plastic. They cut right into it, so you only need to get the odd turn and you're away then. You might be able to see there it's drawing plastic, but I'm not really in enough because it's not I haven't been able to sand whatever that was in there flush. I'm not able to go in at a flat angle. It's sort of rough plastic, so the nib on the end of the prop I was able to sand flush, which meant it was easier to bite. There, I've gone right into the engine now. You see it's sort of going right in. That's not a problem. I don't mind going through it. Can't see any of it anyway. They do tend to do this sort of twisting. You've got to kind of twist and pull, I find, to get a clean, there you go, clean finish. There, now we've got an actual hole. So, looking in the middle there, it's a little bit off to one side. So we're now coming with the 0.6 and try and be a bit heavier back this way. You can't see any of this. Ah, well, there you go. I was using the 0.6. That's the 0.5. So we don't need the 0.5, we'll make it up with the 0.7. So this, I'll just kind of start twisting a little bit, being a bit heavier on it this side, which should widen the hole a little bit. And when you're doing this, they can actually stick, which this has, and it's very easy to snap them when they do this, so it's best just to go with them and sort of hope for the best. I think the plastic kind of melts around it, it must be, and you need to just kind of do everything straight and don't bend it. So taking out that bit of plastic. Now, can we do what I need to do? I haven't got a clean hole there yet, so I need to just do the same thing again to actually get a nice... There we go, we're actually in. You'd find this would be worse as well if you went straight in with the 0.8. You'd barely turn it, it would just be getting caught. Well, I find that anyway. So now I'll just go heavier on the one side. Right, it's pretty good. I'm using this line as the central sort of... I need the hole to be in the middle of that line. I mean, it's barely off it. So it could be a lot worse. I expect it'll all come true when we do what we need to do. So now this is the 0.8. So this is the one you don't want to make too much wider, because it will if you make it too wide, then the tubing won't bite. It's that tricky thing. The hole's got to be big enough that the tubing actually fits into it, but not too big that it then sort of is a bit too loose in there. Right, there we go. Now let's see what we got there. I think that's going to be okay. I wish I could have you sort of dead on in this hole, but I think you can see it there. It's just inside. It's there. Yeah, that is showing up a little bit out of focus. There, I think we're alright. So let's see what happens now when we stick the tubing in. Be a little bit stiff, like I said, is what we want. I don't know how far back it goes. Quite far. There, that's the back of the engine I'm hitting there. Because of it being two-piece engine glued together, it's obviously a hollow part in the middle, and then there's the rear bit that was glued together. Now you've got to be careful, because sometimes with something like this, if that was just a hole, you'd go all the way into the cockpit, but I don't think that's a problem here. So, right, is that coming out straight? No, is the answer there. It's pretty good. Again, using this tube, I know you can't see what I'm looking at it from above, but using this tubing that's so long, you can see that at the end just how far off it is, whereas if you're just using a small bit, it wouldn't show. But for what we're doing, I think that's absolutely fine. So this may seem a little bit long-winded, but it's all for the good of what we need. So I'm going to cut this tubing down a little bit now. So after a little bit of trial and error and actually cutting off a piece of this tubing here, gluing it to the back of this, pushing it in, getting it stuck in there and having to push it through, so it's now stuck in the engine, I've decided to put glue in the hole and then push this rod right to the back of the engine plate, so hopefully it then glues at the hole here and at the rear part as well. I'm going to let that set up now and then actually cut it off and leave it so that this hopefully then just sort of screws onto it, because it wasn't working the way I expected after sanding and gluing it from this point on the back of the prop. As you pushed it in, it just didn't work how I expected and it got stuck. So I think it's better to have the hole in the back of the prop, well, the prop back plate, and have it so that it slots down nicely just in there. So that's what we're going to try now. So I'll let that dry up. I've been able to centre it very well actually by just bending the tube slightly, and then I have to cut that off quite closely back here so that it's enough for, really it's just going to need to be the sort of length of that shaft which needs to go into that hole so that the back plate just sits just off of the front of the fuselage. Okay, so now the next step is to cut this bar off, which is a little bit trickier than it seems, because usually I cut it with a knife by rolling it, which is what they say to do, that being Albion alloys. So I need to, well, probably start measuring stuff, and I've roughly measured it, but we're doing everything by eye really. So I'm going to cut this a little bit sort of forward of where I need it, but near enough with these wire cutters. It should go through it no problem, he says. Let's put a kink in it, that's the way to do it. Get it off like that. So that's the first bit. Now we need to think about, and so I apologise if this is a bit long-winded, it's pretty obvious what I'm trying to do here. So yeah, we need to go on a little bit further, so I think again I'm going to go a little bit over the top to make sure that I don't need to worry about it again now. That should be plenty. But what I have done now is crimped the end, which is going to cause a problem for it being so tight. So just going to sand that back. Right, let's see how this goes. This should actually just slot in now, but there may be something going on here that I haven't really taken on board, is the fact that it's not going to slot into the original hole unless it's absolutely perfect. And I'm not sure it is. There we go. Right. It's very stiff, very tight, but that's nearly there. Can we go any more? I feel like I'm really playing with danger now. It's not quite level, so I can I need to just, it needs to get a bit looser, to be honest. I'm just going to play with this off camera a minute. Right, and there we go. I think with a little bit of tinkering I can get this a little bit better. What's happening is obviously me not measuring it or checking anything. it's slightly off at certain points, and therefore when you put this on, it really throws it off. I mean, you need that to be absolutely in the middle, and then this to be absolutely in the middle. It's the sort of thing when you see spinning props, if they're not dead straight, they wobble and all sorts. So it's just that sort of thing. But with a little bit of tinkering, this does now go on quite well, actually. So it is tight. You have got to sort of twist it in. So with a little bit of wiggling, it actually sits okay. So you just got to check. Well, I've just got to check that you can go anywhere from that to, you know, you can get it way off like this. There's a bit of play in it, if you see what I mean, like there. But basically, for what I wanted to do, it's fine. And you only have to just sort of twist it and manipulate it, and then it sits fine like that. So that's nice and square to what I want. It's even on both sides as well. If I look from the top, I should see sort of wants to go off one way, but you just kind of move it. As I say, it's only for display. This isn't going into competitions or anything. It basically means I can take the prop off and get it back on in a sensible way. It's nice and stiff, and it sorts it out. So that's helped that little bit. And with the canopy that we did last week, which is there, there's not much more really to go around on this one. I do tend to grab it on the ailerons a bit here, and I've just noticed that this one is a little bit loose, so that just wants a dab of glue back down. I'd be interested to know if anyone watching has a good suggestion on how you would get rid of that white line there. I'm not very I think it's too late at this point, to be honest, to do anything about it, but it would have been nice not to have that white ring around the edge of this one. That's just where I built the white up too much, and then it peeled off. But I did try sanding it back and couldn't get rid of it, so I just went on with the weathering over the top. But yeah, that's probably the only thing I'm a little bit picky about. So I'm going to glue that aileron down now, which is here. And I think that's probably good enough. We may then revisit this one when we start doing some washes on the other ones. And there we go. I think that brings this week's update to an end. Not sure on what's coming up through this week, as I've literally got back today. This is the first day back in the room. I haven't actually done any modelling, just filmed this and filmed a few other bits. So I'll sort of get back into it over the next few days, and there'll be plenty coming up through the week. I will at least have another review of some sort. There'll be progress on the Eduard 109 and the Boomerang. I'll also be having another part of the Boomerang up on Sunday, and that will sort this week out, and then by the time we get to next week's update, we should be well along with some of these. Start looking at some of the other builds that have stalled a little bit. Need I say DC2. It can't stall, it's just being put out the way until other projects get nearer to a stage, because that's entered to my own group build, so I don't think you can not finish a build for your own group build. That would be disastrous. So there we go. As usual, if you're enjoying everything and you like what you're seeing, please let me know in the comments below. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Stay tuned to the channel as well, because there's plenty more to come, and I'll see you in my next video.